Hello, and it's been a while since I have done a video, and I just want to say I am back. I am back again at doing videos. I am excited to be back, and I'm not going to go too much into the sort of, technology sucks and stuff like that, but technology does suck a bit, especially when you just have a phone and you're using your mobile phone to edit videos. It's very tedious and it's very long and just really annoying. I'm still getting to terms with the new editing software that I'm using on the computer right now, but I have a fantastic new microphone which is good quality. Well, at least I hope it's good quality anyways. I hope you guys can hear me clearly enough, but this is me sort of back now, and I'll be doing more videos, well, hopefully more and sort of more regularly anyways. But anyways, as we know, this year is Doctor Who's 60th. Now, I absolutely love Doctor Who, and my favourite villain of all time from Doctor Who is the Daleks. So that is what this video is today. It is a Dalek review of sorts, sort of video. So I'll be basically, giving a list of my favourite Dalek stories and my not so favourite Dalek stories. I do have a sort of in-between list as well, sort of episodes that I would recommend, but I'm not personally saying that they are up there with my, oh yeah, I totally recommend them. They're more sort of, I'd recommend them, but I'm not going to straight off the bat say, yeah, this is a great episode, I'm totally recommending that. You guys might disagree though, and you know what, everyone is allowed their own views and stuff. So anyways, we are just going to get on with this list. So in my sort of list that I would say these are episodes I recommend, I have got, starting off, The Daleks, 1963, of course, the staple episode, that main one, the one that started off everything. I've got Evil of the Daleks, Genesis of the Daleks, The Power of the Daleks, Planet of the Daleks, Parting of Ways, Dalek, Doomsday, Evolution of the Daleks, the Daleks' Invasion of Earth, and also the Peter Cushing films. Now, you're probably wondering why I have the Peter Cushing films in this sort of selection, considering they're not Doctor Who canon. They are, however, remakes of two Dalek stories, which is the Daleks and the Daleks' Invasion of Earth. And I also feel it's important to mention that Bernard Cribbins is in one of them, and both of them have got Peter Cushing. Both are fantastic actors, and as we know, Bernard Cribbins would later on reprise a role in the actual Doctor Who show as Donna Noble's grandfather, Wilfred Mott, I believe his name is. And I just think it's quite interesting. He fought the Daleks with Peter Cushing in Doctor Who and the Daleks, Invasion of Earth and stuff. And I personally like those films. The only thing I didn't like about them was the Dalek guns, the fact that they shot out steam and stuff rather than gas. But anyways, I feel it's important for me to mention also that Genesis of the Daleks was actually the first story I started off with. It was a rerun, of course, and it wasn't the original, and I'm not old enough to have watched the original. As I got older, videos were still a thing, and there was a couple of videos that my uncle did have at the time, but then we started to switch to DVDs, and that's of course one of the episodes that he got on DVD, which was Genesis. I absolutely love Genesis. I feel it's just as important in terms of Dalek lore as the first Dalek story, because it kind of rewrites their history a little bit, and it introduces Davros as well. Also, I wanted to mention just a little brief bit more about the Peter Cushing films, only I'm just going to cover that. Notice the Dalek design. Now, even though the Dalek design is basically like, the Daleks' Invasion of Earth design, because it's got that big sort of, that platform that it's sitting on. But if you notice, the design's also very similar in terms of the light speakers, to the modern Daleks, and how they sound as well is slightly similar as well to the Time War variant. But anyways, I'm just going to now move on to the middle section. So in the middle section now, I've got Remembrance of the Daleks, Revelation of the Daleks, The Chase, and Journey's End and also The Stolen Earth. Also, I don't know if I mentioned it, Resurrection of the Daleks. I'm hoping I mentioned it. Now, obviously, these ones are all Davros related stories, apart from The Chase. The Chase, for me, it was an alright story. It's a good story, it's watchable, and of course it is, Ian and Barbara's farewell story as well. But it's just the whole, the Daleks are constantly chasing the TARDIS and stuff, and it is the first time, of course, the Daleks are seen with time travel. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that episode. I quite like it, and I would recommend it, but I wouldn't recommend it as highly as some of the other episodes that I did mention in the previous listening. Anyways, the reason I mentioned a lot of the Davros stories is because after Genesis, I feel that the biggest problem with the Daleks was Davros. Every story had to be a Davros story. It was like, oh look, there's a new Dalek story coming out. Who's going to be the bad guy in it? It's Davros. And Resurrection of the Daleks is a fantastic story, and so is Revelation of the Daleks. Both are dark stories. Remembrance of the Daleks was okay. It was good, it was watchable. However, there was a couple of things that were a bit cheesy in it. The Special Weapons Dalek was fantastic. The fact that it was two different Dalek factions fighting each other, not like in Evil of the Daleks are introduced with the human factor. So instead it was Daleks that served the Emperor and Daleks that served Davros. So it was a full-out civil war, or a full-out war between two different Dalek factions, the Renegades and the Imperial Daleks. The only thing is I personally wasn't a big fan of the Imperial Daleks, and I think that's the thing that lets it down for me anyways. For Revelation of the Daleks, it's definitely the Imperial Daleks. I've never been a big fan of them for some reason. It's just the cream colour. I wasn't a big fan. I was always a big fan of the grey, dark looking Daleks. I liked them really. I was never a big fan of the Imperial Daleks, and I got tired of the Davros storyline really quickly, especially after Destiny, because Destiny just didn't really do much for me, and that's in the list of sort of episodes I would not really recommend. I'd maybe mention it in a conversation when it comes to Dalek stories and stuff, but I wouldn't really say, oh yeah, it's a great episode to watch. Also, the reason that Stolen Earth and Journey's End is in this section for me is because of the treatment to the Daleks. So Stolen Earth builds up, the return of Davros and the Daleks in a big way, but then it kind of kills off that vibe so quickly with Journey's End. Journey's End is more focused on the different individuals that are in Doctor Who, like Sarah Jane Smith, Martha Jones and Torchwood and everything like that. It's kind of focusing more on them, and then it's just the whole the sort of story of Dr. Donna, or the Doctor meta crisis thing that goes on, with Ten's severed hand and all that, and how he's half human, half Time Lord, and then Donna's half human, half Time Lord technically, and she's also the fastest typist in Chiswick, if you haven't, if you've not forgotten already, which is certainly going to remind you in that episode that she is by typing a bunch of orders out on a keyboard and making the Daleks go spinning around. And then Davros, of course, gets declared a traitor by the Supreme One, and then the Dalek goes down to kill Davros again, which kind of happens a lot to Davros. So for me it's a bit of a cliche ending. And also, of course, why did the Daleks need a crucible? The Daleks are supposed to be a threat. Without big threatening weapons, the Daleks don't need big threatening weapons to be a threat. There was enough Daleks there, as the Meta Crisis Doctor said, to slaughter the cosmos. If anything, I think the best thing that they could have ended that with was disabling the Crucible in a way that it wasn't usable, and somehow stopping it from being usable. But of course, how could you do that with Davros being there? Davros would figure out a way to get it working again, or just make it that it's impossible for it to be used, or give the Daleks a bit of a chance to escape from the Crucible, so that you've got that Dalek fleet out there now being a big threat. and that would have brought the Daleks back to their supremacy. But anyways, you know, they had to just make them the sort of spinning kick the pepper pot sort of thing again, you know. But moving on to my sort of least favourite episodes. Now, these are stories that I've watched, and I can watch them, but they're not my most favourite episodes. So I would say Day of the Daleks, the original and the revised, Death to the Daleks, Destiny of the Daleks, Revolution of the Daleks, Resolution of the Daleks, Victory of the Daleks, Into the Daleks, The Magician's Apprentice, The Witch's Familiar, Eve of the Daleks, and also the Pandora Box Opens, I believe, because that has a Dalek in it as well. Now, Day of the Daleks suffered from poor voicing in the original. I feel like as a big comeback, they just didn't know what to do with the Daleks at that point. They didn't know how to voice them, really. It is mentioned, you know, the voices were different, and also I feel like that story isn't really catered for the Daleks making an appearance again or a big comeback. It's kind of more centred around the Ogorons invading Earth and stuff. I do believe on Doctor Who Night they did mention that somewhere, that in actual fact it was the Ogorons that were invading Earth, and of course the ratings were going down a bit, so they were like, oh, let's bring back the Daleks, you know, we've not brought back the Daleks in a while. So of course, you know, last time we'd seen the Daleks, it was evil of the Daleks, and they had all went to fight against each other, and there was a civil war. There was just an ominous glowing light left, or in the animated version there is one Dalek left that survives, and obviously rebuilds Skaro, rebuilds the Dalek Empire and stuff, and that's where the Daleks come into this story, technically. But if you watch the original broadcasting, or if you were around, you'll remember it was the ominous glowing coming from the Emperor Dalek that was still left. There was meant to be a hint that the Emperor Dalek hadn't actually died, he was just critically wounded. And anyways, like, you know, where was I? So, yeah, basically, I feel like, you know, even with the sort of the revised version with all the special effects, the extra Dalek, the extra Ogorons, which really you didn't need extra Ogorons, and also the, you know, the voicing from Nicholas Briggs, it still doesn't do much. Like, it's a good story, it is a good story, but it's the fact they needed to edit it to that extent to try and make it a good story, and it's like, you know, it's better to say there are those stories out there that you won't remember, or you won't be like, oh, that's a great story. In fact, you'll be like, no, it's not really a great story. There are better stories out there. And, you know, Death to the Daleks feels similar to Power of the Daleks. That is a later story. And it just kind of takes that sort of, let's take away something from the Daleks recipe and let's see how that, you know, how they get on in the storyline. Let's take away their guns for funsies and let's give them ballistics instead. Are they still as threatening? No, not really. Just them shooting a machine gun. It's kind of like a tank, really, in that sense. So of course, you know, I feel like the Daleks do suffer quite a bit from sometimes poor writing or just poor stories. And that's, you know, that's basically those episodes for me anyways. Death to the Daleks was just a sort of a rehash of Power of the Daleks, and when it comes to, you know, like the later episodes after the Stolen Earthern Journey's end story, they kind of suffer a bit from what I call kick the pepper pot syndrome, which is basically, you know, where the Daleks aren't that menacing to the point where you know, a character could go up and easily kick a Dalek and it would do nothing. So Victory was meant to be that sort of bring back the Daleks to the supremacy. Instead we get introduced with colourful Teletubbies, which Moffat ended up later on regretting, which was the Paradigm Daleks. Victory does nothing in terms of Dalek story though, because it doesn't really make their victory feel like a really up there sort of victory or a big threat or anything. I do know there is a story that follows on exactly from that episode where the Doctor and Amy travel to, well, follow the Daleks and discover a fully fledged Dalek Empire rebuilt. But I think if anything, it was the whole cracking Amy's wall and, you know, all of reality getting kind of sort of disappearing and stuff, and that was the old overlooming sort of story narrative of this story. And of course, you know that Amy can't remember the Daleks invading Earth. So it's kind of one of those things, really. You know, I feel like a lot of the modern Who episodes do suffer from that. The Daleks are kind of treated as a sideline character now, you know, slight sideline threat, where there is actually another overlooming threat, or there's just been a threat that the Doctor's just managed to stop. Like Flux, for example. Flux had, after it, had Eve of the Daleks, which I suppose it was an okay episode, but it was just, you know, you could tell where it was going. You could tell that, you know, that they were going to figure out how to beat the Daleks, because they always do. And then, of course, you know, the Flux storyline was that the Daleks, the Cybermen, all sort of joined together because they wanted shelter from the Flux, and the Sontarans were offering them that. I don't get that, really. One minute the Cybermen and the Daleks hate each other, and the Daleks view everyone as less than them. So I'm thinking to myself, why would the Daleks do that, allow themselves to get into that situation? Doesn't strike me as a very Dalek thing, really. Yeah, the Daleks have allied with people before, just out of desperation, of course, but then eventually those allies end up getting turned upon, you know. So I feel like that's the thing about modern Who is, I think they are running a bit out of ideas for Dalek stories. I think, if anything, they forget that the Daleks, first of all, are scientists, so that's what Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks does quite well, is it shows the Daleks experimenting, it shows them being all sciencey, and that's what the Daleks, when they first came out, was originally intended to be, were scientists of a radioactive planet. They were meant to be, you know, this scientific race that was trying to find a way to get out of their shells, and of course they thought the Thal drug was, you know, that way forward, but it wasn't. And yeah, there's, with, you know, getting to the end of this video, I'd say there are a lot of good episodes out there. You know, like, there's obviously my listing of my personal favourite episodes, and then of course there are some episodes that I'm just like, no, they're not worth really talking about or worth remembering, but still I feel it's important to talk about them. And I think, you know, as I do more videos, I may do separate videos on each episode, what I liked and what I disliked about each episode, because I feel it's important to cover each episode in its own way and to just sort of highlight what could have been done better in this episode, or what should have been done, or what was done right, really. In truth, though, I do like, you know, I love the Daleks a lot. I've got a Dalek tattoo, and I love the Daleks. Like, you know, they are my favourite race from any sort of sci-fi thing, really. I've been into the Daleks a lot longer than I have Warhammer, although I do absolutely love Warhammer, of course. But yeah, I feel like, you know, the Daleks do get written poorly sometimes, and sometimes they're just shown as being really weak when they should be shown as a very formidable threat. And it's just, how do you do that, though? You know, with so many stories that have already been written that have shown the Daleks at their supremacy, is it maybe time to sort of put them to rest for a little bit longer? You know, give them that well-needed rest and make people want to see them again on screens? Because I feel at this point, it's just kind of trying to keep them there, but obviously when they came back in 2005, I really wanted to desperately see them back on screen, and we got fantastic episodes in that entire season, you know, which I think I am going to cover in a separate video, more in depth. But I'd say, you know, seeing the Emperor Dalek again all crazy and seeing how dangerous one Dalek is alone, it's really, you know, it was just really eye-opening, seeing the Daleks in that sort of extent. Anyways, I think what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to, because I'm conscious of time, I'm just going to end this video here, and I'm just going to, you know, I'm just going to leave it to you guys. What do you guys think of my listing? What do you guys think of Dalek stories and stuff? What is your favourite Dalek story? What is your least favourite Dalek story? And I look forward to doing more videos about this. I will be doing another video at some point regarding a movie that I've seen recently, a horror film. I'll be covering that in a review. which I'm looking forward to, but also a bit like, how on earth do I do a review about this film? Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and take care, and I'm glad to be back again at doing videos.